Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best supports for patch 6.9. Before I start the video though, guys, I just want to let you know that I won't be doing the jungle list until patch 6.10. Now, the reason being is because if I were to do it for this patch, it wouldn't be out until Tuesday, and patch 6.10 hits on Wednesday or Thursday. And I really don't think there's a point in having it out for only one day and having it being relevant for one day, so I'm going to do that one as the first list for patch 6.10. So with that being said, guys, let's get into this video. So first on my list for this patch is going to be Taric. Taric is a really strong support overall. He's got good crowd control in his kit with his E, he's got the heal on his Q, and he's also got the shield with his W. His ultimate is really strong too if it can be used correctly. If you can time it at the right, or if you can use it at the right time in a team fight, then you can negate a lot of damage and it can completely turn a team fight around. You do have to know like when to use it correctly, and it does definitely take time to judge like when you should be using it in a team fight or when you should use it in the laning phase. So I do think because of that, Taric is a little bit harder to play than some of the other supports, and he also does scale really well into the late game because his abilities do scale off of health and armor. And a few cons to Taric are that he doesn't have any hard engage or hard disengage because his E is a relatively shorter ranged ability, and he is also weaker against disengage supports because once he uses his E, he doesn't have any follow-up CC after that. So if he is playing up against a Janna or a Zaira, then it's just really easy for them to disengage after he does use his stun. Next on my list is Braum. So right now, with Lucian being one of the most played AD carries, Braum is definitely a very viable pick right now. His passive synergizes really well with Lucian, and you can definitely look to have a very good laning phase if you do play with him. I'm pretty sure Lucian's got like a 40 or 50% play rate right now, which is really insane. He's pretty much picked in every single game, so if Lucian is picked as the AD carry, then I would look to play Braum in that situation. He does have good engage and disengage in his kit. He can look to go for flash alt engages, but where Braum really shines is with his disengage, because if the enemy team does try to dive on his AD carry, he can throw his ult down. He's got his unbreakable, which he can use to negate a lot of damage, and then he's also got his Q, which he can use to slow, and on top of that, he's got his passive, so he's just got a really strong disengage kit. He can also soak a lot of damage in teamfights if he does use his E at the correct time. His W is also really nice for looking for sneaky engages in the laning phase, and you can also use it to get out of sticky situations by jumping to your teammate or by jumping to a minion. His level 6 all-in is also great because he does have strong crowd control. So what I like to do when I play as Braum is I go into the bush, and if the enemy AD carry or support walks up, I'm just going to throw my ult down and engage on them, because the amount of follow-up CC you have with Braum after using your ultimate is really good. And his Q also does some pretty good poke damage in the laning phase. One con to Braum is that he does have some weaker lane matchups against some of the ranged supports. Next up, I have Zaira. So I think Zaira is definitely a very sleeper OP pick this patch. The changes she did get to her passive are really strong because it just allows her to get a lot more plants down now, and if the enemies don't step on your passive, then it's just going to allow you to deal so much damage in the laning phase, and you just have so much zone potential when you are playing as Zaira. She is one of the higher damage supports in the game. When I am playing Zaira, I'm not going to build defensive items most of the time. Like, I'm not going to go for a Mikhail's, or I'm not going to go for a Locket. What I like to do when I play Zaira is I'll go for the Frost Queens. I'll buy a Sightstone because you should buy that on every single support. And then after that, I'll probably go damage. I'll build Sork Boots, I'll build a Leandries and a Rylai's, and you can definitely carry games really hard with Zaira support. So if your team is lacking damage or lacking AP damage, then I would highly recommend picking Zaira in that situation. She does have the great poke in the laning phase too with her Q, and she also does have really good disengage in her kit with her ultimate and her E. A few cons to Zaira are that she is a very squishy support, so if your team is lacking a tank, then in that situation, I would not pick Zaira. And she is a little bit harder to play in my opinion because you do have to know, or you do have to time your ultimate correctly and place it in the right spot, because it does have a little bit of a delay on the knockup. So if you place it a little bit too far forward, then the enemies could just end up flashing out of it, or they could just walk right out of it. So I do think because of that, she is a bit harder to play. Next up is going to be Janna. So in my opinion, Janna is the best disengaged support in the game. If the enemy team does lock a hard engaged champion or a champion who's gonna look to dive on your back line, then I would recommend picking Janna for sure in that situation. She's got great CC in her kit with her ultimate, her Q, and her W. Her shield is also really effective for either in the laning phase or in team fights, because not only does it give the shield, but it also does buff up your AD carry's damage. So if you place that on your AD carry in the laning phase, as long as they're not stupid, then they should be able to win the trade every single time. She also scales pretty well with ability power. The AP ratio on her ultimate is quite good, so if you find yourself or your team getting ahead, then I would definitely recommend building a little bit of AP on her. Definitely go Frost Queens, but after that, if you are ahead, go something like a Banner, or you could even go Majai's if you are really far ahead. And a few cons to Janna are that she does have weaker engage compared to other supports like a Leona or a Blitz or Thresh. So if your team is lacking engage, then I would not pick Janna in that situation. And she also does rely on her AD carry because she doesn't have the strongest engage. When you are playing with a Janna, make sure you do go a little bit more aggressive as the AD carry, because Janna does have that great peel to back you up. So as long as her ultimate is up, then don't be afraid to go a bit more aggressive when you are playing AD carry. And to round out my top 5 for this patch, I have Blitzcrank. So Blitzcrank is a really good champion because one hook at any stage of the game could either get a nice snowball going if it's in the early game, or it could end up winning you the game if it is a mid to late game team fight. He's a very strong roaming champion too. If you find yourself getting ahead in the laning phase, then look to buy Mobies and look to go for a roam either top or mid lane and help out your team, because that's what a good Blitzcrank player will do, and that's how you can end up carrying when you are playing as support. He does have that AoE silence with his ultimate, which just makes him a really good pick against any champion that wants to try to dive on your AD carry. He's also great if you do get ahead in the laning phase, or your team does get ahead, because then you can just always be looking for those hooks and looking for those engages. And he does have pretty strong crowd control in his kit with his ult, his E, and his Q. And lastly, a few of the downsides to Blitz are that he is pretty skill shot reliant with his Q, so if you're not used to playing Blitzcrank a lot, or if you haven't played him at all, then I would get used to playing him in normal games before you do head into ranked. And he also doesn't have any disengage really in his kit, so if your team's lacking that, then in that situation I would not pick him. So first up on the honorable mentions, I have Alistar. So Alistar is a really tanky support with his ultimate. He also does have great engage with his WQ combo. It's very key that you know how to use this combo though when you are playing as Alistar, because if you don't, then it really limits what you can do with this champion. If you don't know how to use your WQ combo, definitely look to practice that in normal games before playing him in ranked, but once you do get that down, you can look for nice engages. He can also disengage pretty well with his W and his Q, so overall he is a pretty strong tank support. Next up, I have Soraka. So Soraka did get that nerf to her Q this patch, which has dropped her win rate quite a bit. She was the highest win rate support, or she did have the highest win rate for any support in patch 6.8, but her win rate dropped like 5% this patch. So in my opinion, she is still a good pick, but I wouldn't pick her unless your team does have good engage or good disengage. If your team is lacking that, then picking Soraka kind of limits what you can do with your team comp, because if you don't have any engage or any disengage, then it's going to be really hard for your team to win in mid to late game team fights. And lastly, on the honorable mentions for this patch, I have Morgana. So with the recent changes to the mid lane mages, we are seeing a lot more of them being played now, and Morgana is a pretty good pick against those champions because she does have her black shield, which can negate a lot of their damage and their CC as well. So if the enemy team does pick an AP mid lane champion, then I would pick Morgana in that situation. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.